Three of the most powerful brands in the world failed publicly, repeatedly. And instead of hiding, they talked about it. And that one decision, that one counterintuitive move that most people would never have the guts to make is a massive part of why they became who they are today. So today, I want to show you exactly what they did, why it worked, and how you can use the same strategy inside your own personal brand right now. You're listening to the Secret Marketing Diary of Personal Brands, where being the face of your business gets to be powerful, profitable, and unfiltered. So I want to ask you something really quick. When was the last time you came across a piece of content? It could have been a post, a video, a podcast episode, anything. And it just literally stopped you. Like you were not just nodding along, you were actually like, okay, I really trust this person. Not just like them, not just impressed by their resume, actually trust them at a level where you thought, I want to work with this person. I will bet that whatever that content was, it was not a 5-step framework. It was not a perfectly branded carousel. It was not a highlight reel of client wins. It was probably a story, a real one that made you feel like this person has actually been somewhere hard and came back with something worth saying. And here's the thing, that is not just good storytelling. That is actually a strategy. It is very deliberate, but it's also very powerful and wildly underused in personal branding. So today I want to talk about 3 women whose names you know: Oprah Winfrey, Sara Blakely, and Brené Brown. And I want to show you something very specific about how each one of them built the kind of authority and trust that made them household names, not by showcasing their wins, by being radically transparent about their failures, their struggles, and the moments where everything fell apart, and even real life behind the scenes. And then, because we are not here just to be inspired, we are here to actually do something, I'm going to give you the exact framework for how to apply this inside of your own content right now in the season of business that you are actually in. And I want to say this up front because before I get into it, I'm not telling you that you need to become Oprah, okay? I'm not telling you that you need to become a billion-dollar brand like Sara Blakely or give a TEDx talk like Brené Brown, although that is on my list of things to do personally. But that is not the point of this conversation at all. These are human beings, real women who tried things, they failed at things many times, not just once, got told no more times than most people know about, and they kept going anyway. And the reason I'm talking about them is because their stories show us something that works, something that is available to all of us right now, regardless of the size of your audience or the stage that you're on. And this is what's called the Oprah Effect. It's available to every single one of us. Okay, so let's start with Oprah because I think her brand is the most powerful example of this. And also because I think most people do not actually know how many times she got knocked down before she became who she is today. This woman was fired from her first television job as a news anchor. She was told she was too emotionally invested in her stories, like too much, not fit for TV. She grew up in poverty. She experienced abuse. She has been publicly open about struggles with her weight for decades. She lost a baby. She has talked about feeling like a fraud, like she doesn't belong, like the success was going to be taken away at any moment. And here's what she did with all of that. She talked about it out loud on her platform in front of millions of people at a time when nobody in her position was doing that. And every single time she did it, millions of people, they literally exhaled. Like I remember watching the Oprah Winfrey show. It was one of my favorite shows to watch because someone they admired, I admire her, was saying the thing that they have been carrying privately. And in that moment, Oprah did not become less credible. She became more trusted, more human, more chosen because people were able to connect with her on a deep level. And that is the Oprah effect. When a leader is radically transparent about their journey, including the no's, the failures, the setbacks, the moments of real doubt, their audience doesn't pull back. They lean into it. They follow. And eventually, guess what? They invest. Not because they were sold to, because they felt understood by someone who had been somewhere real just like them. Okay, Sara Blakely. And I have to tell you something about this one because I'm still kind of in awe. I had no idea. But number one, I do know she is the Spanx, founder, amazing line, billionaire, one of the most recognizable personal brands in the entrepreneurship space. But my favorite part about this, aside from the fact that she makes us look and feel a lot thinner with her clothing and the way that she gets these things made, is that she is a Florida State University graduate, which is where I went to college. And I didn't know that until I saw a video of her speaking at the FSU graduation this spring, like now in 2026. I genuinely did not know that. When I found that out, I was like, how did I not know this? Because it just makes her even more real to me. She is not some untouchable person who had to have everything figured out. In fact, you should follow her if you don't. I have to tell you, she literally takes us. It's like we are in her life every single week with her kids, with her husband, with her travels. I mean, all of it. I love her goofiness because I'm very similar to that. But even knowing that she's someone that went to the same school that I went to and built something incredible from a very ordinary starting point, to me is just really cool. Not to mention she's also from Florida, not too far from where I'm at. Well, she's from the West Coast and I'm over on the East Coast. But here's her story. So after graduating from FSU, she spent years selling fax machines door to door. Like, I don't even think my kids know what a fax machine is. She failed the LSAT twice. She had this idea, this very simple, very unglamorous idea about cutting the feet off of her pantyhose. And she had zero connections in the fashion industry, zero experience, and zero funding. Just this idea, but the willingness to actually be embarrassed. She drove around to hosiery mills and got turned down over and over and over again. She cold called people who had no reason to take her seriously. She kept the idea secret from almost everyone in her life for a year because she was afraid someone would talk her out of it. And her dad, this is the part that I love the most. Her dad used to ask her every single week at the dinner table, what did you fail at this week? Not what did you accomplish? What did you fail at? Because in her household, failure was not something to be ashamed of. It was evidence that you were actually trying something. And honestly, when I heard that about her as a parent myself, it really made me think about even my own behavior with my own kids, right? And I love the perspective. She talks about this publicly all the time. And what it does for her brand, honestly, is remarkable because every woman who has an idea and feels unqualified to pursue it looks at Sara Blakely and thinks, she did it anyway. She was turned down. She was underestimated. She didn't know what she was doing, right? But she still did it. And that is not, to me, just inspiration. That is positioning. She became the brand that gives women permission to actually try. And it really all starts with her willingness to tell that real story. So the third one, I quote her all the time. And one of her famous quotes, and I use this when I'm talking to my clients about their live video stage presence and having the ability to be on these platforms for free and really create your own stage. So here it goes. Sometimes the bravest and most important thing you can do is just show up. And I've taken this quote and used it over and over and over again, not just for myself, but also to share with my clients. And even when I speak about live video and showing up on camera and having this presence and conviction, it's something that always sticks with me. Now, she is probably the most direct example of someone who turned the thing most professionals are trained to hide into their entire brand. She's a researcher. She studied shame and vulnerability for years. And she has talked very openly about the fact that when she started that research, she was fully expecting the data to confirm that vulnerability was weakness. What she found instead completely dismantled her own worldview. And she had what she has called publicly on stage in front of millions of people, a breakdown, or as she's reframed it, a spiritual awakening. She went to therapy, she fell apart for a little bit, and then she came back with something true. And she talked about it on a TEDx stage and then talked about it on one of the most watched TED Talks in the history of the platform, not because of the data, because she said, I am a researcher who studies vulnerability and my own research broke me. And here's what I found on the other side of that. So, that level of transparency from someone with a PhD and decades of research behind them did not let her look weak. It made everything that she said after feel unshakable because she was not just reporting findings, she had actually lived them. Okay, so here's where I want to get really real with you for a second, because I'm not just going to tell you that vulnerability works and then show you mine. When I started my agency, I was fiercely private, like almost aggressively private. I had a logo, I had a business name, and I was perfectly happy to let those things represent me while I stayed behind the scenes. The idea of putting my actual face, my actual voice, my actual personality out there as the brand, it felt so completely unnecessary to me and honestly kind of terrifying. And then I realized that it was not working being behind the scenes. That staying behind the scenes was actually costing me opportunities. Nobody was calling me because nobody actually knew who the hell I was beyond my ugly ass logo, and it's not what it is today, and a service menu. So around 2017, I decided to try live video on my personal profile, which if you know anything about Facebook reach, you know that the personal profile is where you're going to get the most engagement, right? And I knew that intellectually, but knowing it and then actually hitting that go live button are two very different things. I was a hot, sweaty mess. Like, this is back when I was not even, let's see, I guess I was in my late 30s or like mid 30s. And so I definitely wasn't going through perimenopause or menopause, right? But I was literally sweating under my arms, cotton mouth, shaky voice, the entire thing. And I kept doing it anyways, because I decided a long time ago that if something is not going to kill me, I'm going to try it. I almost forgot to mention this. One of the things that I used to do the first time I went live, or the first, I don't know, probably couple dozen times that I went live, when I would go live on my personal profile, I specifically blocked out certain people that I was friends with on Facebook because I was too scared for them to see me live. So to me, I felt better going live in front of people that I didn't know or acquaintances, but close family and friends. They were blocked out of my live videos. No more. Now, there's obviously like some boundaries around that, but I think you get the point. So I pushed through the awkwardness and the uncomfortableness and the sweaty pits, and I kept showing up. And here's the thing, it still happens. I spoke at an online summit recently with some really incredible women. I'm talking about some of these women have hundreds of thousands of followers, and I'm sitting here with maybe 3,000 on Instagram and a few thousand across my Facebook profiles, and I still got cotton mouth. I still felt it. I still pushed through it. Now, the weird thing though is that that's the first time in probably like years that I've ever gotten cotton mouth when doing a virtual summit. I have also spoken on stages and gotten embarrassing cotton mouth. But guess what happened? I still actually got clients from it, because that's actually the point. It does not just go away completely. You just get better at doing it anyway. And so here's the other story I want to share, because I think this is going to hit even harder for some of you. About 5 years ago, I decided I wanted to do more consulting and mentorship in a one-to-many setting, right? So in small mastermind containers, virtually. And I had been doing one-on-one strategy work through my agency for years. I've been in sales for 24 years, but what most of us would call high ticket sales, selling $5,000 plus monthly retainers to organizations, to me, is I could do that without breaking a sweat. But then about 5 or 6 years ago, when I decided I want to do more one to many, and I really want to focus on this. I'm not kidding you. I was doing launches. I have spent advertising dollars, making offers, and it just was not clicking. I felt like a complete fraud. Like, how is it possible that I can sell a $50,000, $100,000 package to a corporation and then turn around and completely bomb trying to sell something that costs a fraction of that to an individual? I was embarrassed, like genuinely embarrassed, because I have been doing my work for decades. How could I not figure out how to sell one to many like a $500 a month offer or even a $100 a month offer. And I wasn't talking about it publicly because I didn't want anyone to know. And you know what I found out? That when I finally started talking about it, almost every single one of my colleagues in the same space had gone through the same exact thing. Like, it's practically a rite of passage that nobody talks about because everyone is too busy pretending they figured it out on the first try. And it's such a big freaking lie. And so that is exactly my point. The thing you are most embarrassed about is probably the thing your ideal client most needs to hear. So I actually tell this story, especially with my clients that are building courses and they feel like they're failures and they've had decades of experience in their expertise. But that one thing, like I said, is probably the thing that your ideal client most needs to hear. Not because you owe anybody your pain, but because your honesty about the hard parts is the thing that actually makes them trust you with theirs. And what I want you to hear before I give you the framework, I am definitely not Oprah. I am not Sara Blakely, although I would love to meet her. I am not Brené Brown. I'm a marketing strategist from Fort Myers, Florida, who went to FSU just like Sara did, which, by the way, I did not find that out until she just spoke recently at the graduation this spring. And I was like, how did I not know this? Who has built an agency. I've stayed invisible for years longer than I should have. I sweated through my first, who knows, like dozens of live videos. And I've had multiple failed launches before I finally figured out how to sell in the online space. And I'm telling you my story because the framework I'm about to give you, I didn't just research it, I've actually lived it. And so did Oprah and Sara and Brené, which means it works regardless of the size of the platform or how polished your brand looks right now. Okay, so let's get into it because the whole point of this episode is to give you something that you can actually use. So what Oprah, Sara, and Brené all did, whether they called it this or not, it follows a very specific structure. And I want to give you that structure right now so that the next piece of content you create involves your story, not just raw and real, but strategic and converting to create conversations. I call it the story to authority arc, okay? And it's got 4 parts. So part 1 is the before. This is where you paint a picture of the struggle. And I need you to get specific here because vague does not land with people, okay? Not, I was going through a hard time. No, the specific moment, that specific feeling, the specific circumstance. The more specific the before, the more your ideal client sees themselves in it and thinks, wow, is she talking about me? Okay, so that's part 1. Here's a little disclaimer on that. I'm not talking about things that are so private that you don't want anyone to know. All right. Unless that is what you want to do. Okay. Part 2 is the pivot. So this is going to be something that shifted, a realization, a decision, a conversation, maybe a piece of information that changed everything for you. That is not the solution yet. This is for you, it's going to be like the turning point, right? The moment where you stopped doing what was not working and you started to see things differently. Part 3 is the actual insight. So this is what you actually learned from it, not what you did, what you learned, the principle, the thing that is now true for you, but it was not true before. This is where your authority is going to live because this is something that you earned. You can't Google this, right? You've lived it. And then the 4th part is the invitation. This is where you're going to connect this story back to your audience, not a pitch, okay? It's more like a mirror, something like, if this sounds familiar, if you are in the middle of this right now, here's what I want you to know. And then you speak directly to where they are. That is the structure. So there's the before, the pivot, the insight, and the invitation. And when you use this consistently in your content, one story at a time, one real moment at a time, you start to build the kind of trust that makes premium buyers reach out to you. Not because you ran a campaign at them, okay, but because they felt like you already understood them before they ever even said a word to you. So to be 100% transparent, I gave you the framework today, those 4 parts, the strategy, why it works. But what I did not give you, obviously, is the process for identifying which stories from your own life and business are the ones that will land the hardest with your specific ideal client. Because not every story is the right story. And knowing which ones to tell in which order, on which platforms to create the most trust fastest That is the work that we do together inside of our spaces when you work with me in any capacity. So, if you want help figuring out what the most powerful positioning stories are for you, shoot me a DM with the word story over on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the places that you can find me. And you know that I will get back to you personally. So I want to end with this. Oprah was fired from her first TV job and told that she was not a fit for television. I bet she's laughing at them now. Sara Blakely, my FSU Seminole sister, she doesn't even know who I am, failed the LSAT twice and got turned down by every single person she pitched before Spanx became what it is today. Brené Brown had a breakdown in the middle of her own research. All real women, real failures, real stories told publicly and strategically. And I'm not going to tell you to become any of them. I'm telling you that the same thing that worked for them will work for you, because it's not about the size of the platform. It's about the realness of what you share on it. Your story is not a liability. It is your most powerful competitive edge. So go tell it, and I will see you on the next one. You're listening to the Secret Marketing Diary of Personal Brands, where being the face of your business gets to be powerful, profitable, and unfiltered.